Welcome to the first in a series of weekly programming tip videos. This week we're going to focus on debugging. After all, nobody's perfect and you've probably been seeing some error messages, so we need to know how to deal with those. Second of all, we're also going to look at code readability because after all, you and other people should understand your code. So we're going to look at a series of examples where we have some code, we run it, we get an error, and we try to fix that error. So in our first example, we just have a tiny program that's supposed to compute the volume of a cube. Okay, so let's see, we run it, and of course we get an error, a name error. Name SIDDE is not defined. Now, what's the problem? Okay, what our definition is, the function parameter is SIDE, but in the body of the function we spell it SIDDE. Okay, we just typed it slightly wrong, fix that typo, run it again, and it works. Good. So in this example, we have a little function that's supposed to compute the area of a rectangular prism. So what happens when we run it? Well, we get another name error. Okay, so in particular, line 7, name volume rect prism is not defined. So it tells us what line, we can look there, but in addition it's highlighted that so we can see that indeed we used that name, volume rect prism, but you should double check what it should have been. What we defined was volume rect prism with underscores in it, and we left the underscores out, so we need to fix the typos and rerun, and it works. Next, in this example, we have a function that returns the sum of two random dice. So let's see what happens when we run it. We get yet another name error. Okay, the name random is not defined. Well, in this example, we don't have a function or a variable named random. Here, the name random is supposed to be the name of the module that this function comes from. Okay, if you remember from the previous video, randint is a function defined in the random module, and what we need to do when we are using the random module is to import that module. Okay, so we need to add an import statement here. And once we do that, that's the definition of random, and it works. Here in this example, we have a function that's supposed to compute the volume of a sphere. Let's see what happens. So I run it, and I get an attribute error. Okay. That module object has no attribute pi. So I look at where it's indicating, and so I have math.pi, and well, I am importing math. That's good. So what's wrong? Well, let's go look at the documentation here. Okay, so we'll go to Code Sculptor Python, scroll down to the math module and math.pi, and we can see that what happened is I misspelled pi. It's not supposed to be capitalized. So I can go back to my code and change that, rerun, and it works. Well, so anytime you get an attribute error, it's complaining that the part after the dot in this name is wrong. It hasn't been defined, which usually means that you've misspelled what you're trying to use. Here I have a function that's supposed to compute the area of a triangle using the typical formula half times base times height. Let's see what happens. We get an error that type error area of the triangle takes exactly two arguments, but one was given. Okay, so let's look at the call. Yes, in fact, I only give it one, but it's supposed to take two. So let's give it the other argument. Once I do, it works. More generally, anytime you provide the wrong number of arguments, too few or too many, you'll get a type error. For this example, I'm going to type in a program as I talk here. And the point is to watch what happens when we're actually typing. So I'll define a function, and this function is just going to return its argument. Very simple and fairly uninteresting. So first I typed def, and note that it color codes the keyword purple. Okay. the name of the function, identity, and it takes an argument x. And notice when I type the closing parenthesis, it matches it up with the corresponding open parenthesis and color codes that while I'm typing. Okay, if it doesn't match up with the parenthesis, then that means that something's wrong. So I'll say return x, and then I want to print out. Before I go any further, notice that also return and print are also keywords, and they are highlighted in purple as well. Okay, what do I want to return? As an example, I want to return identity of 16. Okay, closing parenthesis. If I were to put in an extra parenthesis, it doesn't color code it. It's not matching anything. It's extra. In fact, I don't want it here. Okay, so I run this now, and I get a syntax error. Bad input on line 1 with, open parenthesis, quote, new line, closing quote in parenthesis. Okay, so I've typed in something wrong. And here in the quote, it's trying to say, where is the error? Okay. It doesn't always quite get it right, but basically it's saying at the end of the line, at the carriage return, at the end of the line, there's something wrong. Well, and in particular, what should be at the end of the line is a colon. So add that in, and then we run, and it works. For our last debugging example for this week, we're going to look at this little program that all it does, it takes in a value and compares that value to the string Mary, and then reports whether or not it matched. Okay, and then let's see what happens here. Okay, we run it on a couple values, and we get a bad input, a syntax error once again, a bad input on line 2 at the equal sign. Okay, so what's wrong with if x equals string Mary? Okay, well, let's turn to the documentation again. Let's make sure that we're doing it right. Docs, okay, Code Sculptor Python, we're using strings, and we're wanting to compare things, so let's go to the comparison operators. And let's see here. So we're supposed to compare with less than, greater than, etc. In particular down here it says equal to is 2 equal signs. Okay, this is a very common mistake. A comparison of equality is 2 equal signs, whereas 1 equal sign is an assignment. Okay, so going back to our code, we see that we need 2 equal signs. So we edit that and try it again. And so now it runs correctly. It finds Mary, and then that's not Mary. Okay? All right. So finally this week, we're going to consider code readability a bit. So in a course, what often happens is that you write your code, you turn it in, and you never look at it again. But more realistically, outside of a course, you write some code, you come back to it later on, having forgotten what you've written, and somebody else looks at your code, having no idea what you've done. What you want to do is make it easier to understand your code so that you or somebody else can understand what's going on, so that they can fix problems, extend its functionality, or whatever else they want to do with your code. Maybe they want to use it in some other environment. So we're going to consider several things that help make your code more readable. So for this example, consider that you're looking at somebody's code and you see this particular function defined as area try, takes 3 arguments and has some weird calculation. Is this what you're interested in? What does this do? I mean, do you know? Well, you might guess that it calculates the area of a triangle, and you would actually be correct. But I mean, how would you know that? So first of all, let's actually make this more readable by first giving a better, more descriptive function name. So area triangle. Okay, that's a good start. But no matter how long the function name is, it's not going to be fully descriptive. After all, you don't want too long of a function name; it gets unwieldy. Python convention is to provide a description here of what this does, So I'll say that it returns the area of a triangle with side length with the given side lengths. Okay. And this is kind of strange here. This string actually has 3 double quotes on each side, which is a Python convention for what's known as documentation strings here. And furthermore, a documentation string is just a string that comes after, it's on the first line of the body of the function, provides a description of what it does. Notice that it's just saying what it does and not how it does it. I mean, this function, the body of the function, the calculation, is still rather mysterious. Okay? To help somebody who actually wants to know what's going on in the body of this function, we want to do even more. Okay? And that's provide a comment here to help understand what is being computed and how. Okay, and I'll say uses Heron's formula, which happens to be the name of this particular mathematical formula. And you can look that up on the web to see an explanation. But notice the distinction here between the documentation string that describes the what is it doing and the comment that's describing how is it doing that. Okay. In some other tools, what will happen is that you can actually see all of the documentation for all of the things in your program. It'll put all of the documentation strings together. It provides nice tools like that. So this is a good start. It helps us understand this, but we can still do better. Okay. Just like we changed the name of the function to be more descriptive, the variable name should be more descriptive. So I'm going to change this here. Okay, there's sides. So side 1 and side 2. And while I'm changing this, I'm also going to put in some spacing here to kind of separate visually some of these elements. And so now I want to add up side 1 and side 2 and side 3. Make sure that you are being consistent, naming and renaming all of your variables here. Okay, side 2. Okay, like that. And so notice also that the additional spacing in here makes it more readable, helps us visually distinguish various elements. I'm following a standard convention on how to space things. Lastly, well, I don't really know a better variable name than that because it's just kind of a temporary value in this computation. So I'll leave it as S. It happens to be traditional for this formula. So, well, we'd still like to know if this actually works. Let's finally test this here. So I want to print out area of triangle for some values. And well, I'm going to try 3, 4, 5. Why those values? Well, because I happen to know that a triangle with sides 3, 4, and 5 happen to be a right triangle with base 3 and height 4 and hypotenuse 5. So using our traditional area of a triangle formula, base times height times, or half times base times height, we can say that the area of this triangle should be 6. Notice that I figured out what the intended answer is before I see what happens here. I'm going to run it and see if I get 6. I do. Good. I didn't screw up.